I'm publicly, but also I say this privately. I'm grateful for everybody that comes on the show. Like it really, I'm like, to be honest, truth. Like, look how many, you're like 1,026, dude. That's a lot of really cool people I've had the pleasure of meeting. But like anything else, you have to keep the show, fresh, right? Especially if you do that many of them, you want to change things up at least a little bit. And I'm looking to do more travel. Now, to be honest with you, I realize I'm not as ready for the travel as I want to be just yet. Now, that might change a lot actually in the next few weeks. Some good things have happened, and fingers crossed kind of thing. But it looks like some good things are going to go my way. So I can upgrade some equipment so when I'm on the road, it'll be a better experience. But I want to travel and meet some of the people I've had the pleasure of talking to in person. And what I realized is, and if I'm putting out like a contact form, part of me should be like, yeah, part of me is like, really, like what, like now, like, but it also dawned on me too, after thinking about it. I've opened the door for people to contact me, and people know me from my podcast. Of course, people are going to ask to come on my show, on my podcast. It makes total sense, right?
Is it just creative types, or do you get like all sorts of random people?
Creative types primarily, but which is, again, that's what the show should be, right? It's about creative. It's about creative people. So now it's not just writers, right? Writers have been the ones that approached me that way. I've had like, again, in terms of me getting interviews, I've never had a problem, like ever. And which says a lot about, maybe my personality, big mouth, whatever the case may be. Right. But I say it like that because I am grateful, but like anything else in life, you do want to change. You have to change things up every so often. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I want to go on the road. I want to meet people. I want to do stupid shit on the road is basically what I want to do. And with creative people, because I have a theory about creative people, and it's this. Most of us want to go on adventures, but we're too shy to, and that's why we write books.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, any crazy adventures in your neck of the woods?
Well, I'm based out of Vancouver, so I travel quite a bit, mostly for work, less for the actual writing stuff that I do. But through my work, I've had the opportunity to go some pretty cool places and stuff. But I would like to in the future do some more like creative centered travel as well, whether that's just going to writing cons or writing workshops or any of the stuff that they do. I know they do a lot of it down here, so it's just a matter of getting out of the house and actually doing it.
I gotta say, Vancouver Conventions is unique in that it feels like people come to experience the show, but not so much invest in the show in terms of people's support, which is, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing entirely. I get it. Like Vancouver's expensive as hell to live in. I've been there. I lived there. So I know that and I understand that, but it's amazing. Like the Vancouver crowd is, every city has kind of like its own personality. Right. So, so now my favorite cons, I did San Diego Comic-Con as a pro last year. That I cannot tell you how awesome that experience was. That is like another level. But Vancouver generally does some nice shows. Some nice shows. Calgary does some good shows too. I've done Phoenix. I've done Detroit. I've done, like, because my family's in that at least, so I've done some shows out there too. They all feel like every city has like a personality that's just, human beings are the same everywhere, but they're also just a little bit different, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Now, do you find that you're able to like perform at those things well? When I say perform, I mean like you don't have any problems with the networking or the meeting people or the putting yourself out there, any of that kind of stuff?
No, I see. Okay, so I've told the story way back in about a few hundred episodes back. So I was in the 7th grade, right? I was in London, Ontario, and it was French class, and I had this like moment. Basically, I got called to the front. So imagine this guy, t-shirt, short shorts, and then suddenly, nature takes its course and starting to hit puberty. And next thing you know, I'm standing attention for everybody to see. That's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing to have to happen to you. But the one thing it did do, the good that came from it, not much scares me.
It can't get much worse. Yeah.
No, there's really nowhere. There's nowhere to go but up, right? So,
Yeah,
I mean, and no pun intended there, but that's okay. Right? No pun intended. But the thing is, I think one of the most important lessons I learned from that like experience is that something terrible could happen to you, like the risk. It doesn't work out the way you want it to, and it sucks in that moment. But tomorrow's another day, and ultimately, I've learned this. Ultimately, very few people truly give a shit, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, totally.
Totally. Right. So you might as well just put yourself out there. I've also had the interesting pressure of when I was in Phoenix. First time I tried making I made money strictly from my creativity was when I lived in Phoenix for the first time. And they had this event called First Friday, which is the first Friday of the month. They do like an art thing. So I'm with these amazingly talented people. So I had to learn how to talk. I had to learn to have a big mouth. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't sell a damn thing because everything else around me is just so I've learned I had a compliment at a writing conference this year. It's like, you're a world-class networker. And I am. And I say that like, no, I can talk to anybody and I'm not afraid to talk to anybody. And that's a huge advantage because the whole game, like honestly, people hate this. It's who you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a huge part of it. If you're just sitting there doing your own thing and not getting out there, then like you can be brilliant, but if you're not making those connections, and especially these days, it's gonna be hard to go very far. But you're absolutely right about like getting over that fear of failure. Like I got a bunch of friends who are in stand-up comedy, and they say the same thing. Like you cannot be a great stand-up comedian until you've bombed a few times, until you've gone on stage and just absolutely eaten shit. Because once you get over that, and once you realize that, yeah, like you said, life goes on, and you can only go up, and you face the actual failure head on and you deal with it. And then you learn to sort of pull lessons from that and apply them and all that kind of stuff. So it's the same thing in the publishing world and in the writing world too. I mean, any writer that hasn't stacked up a pile of rejections is probably not trying hard enough, right? So,
well, it's rejection, sure, but it's more than that. It's not even the rejections. I actually, here's the thing. I don't even think it's the pile of rejections. Have you actually talked to these editors? Have you talked to these publishers? Have you gone out of your way to introduce yourself? Because there's a difference. Like, okay, I don't know about you. I meet some people. My rejections are nicer now, but they are nicer. And what I mean by that is they're very rarely the generic, here's a note. Thanks for submitting. You don't apply, blah, 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 blah. Okay, right? They're like, hey, man, I can't take this. I'm sorry. Like, but it's a completely different feel. And again, it's not like the opportunity won't come my way again somehow, some way. And the reason being is I know some of these editors. I know some of these publishers. I know some of these people. And because I know them, they're going to think of me when it's time for a project. They're going to think of me when it's time to try something, right? And that's, again, people hate it's like, well, it has nothing to do with good. Good is relative. I like the other big thing, and this is like a major shocker to some people, right? You can suck at this, legitimately suck, and make a living doing this, right? The thing is, can you show up? Do they know who you are? Can you deliver a product? That sounds really simple, almost borderline cynical, but it is amazing. Like, coming back to Calgary, like one of the biggest things I realize is people here do not, by and large, appreciate time. Finding reliable people that are going to say, I'm going to be there and actually be there, that is incredibly rare. I don't know why it's so rare, but it's so incredibly rare. And that's why networking works. This is why these things work, because what a publisher wants, what a boss wants, what all these like industries, any industry wants, really, and at the end of the day,
a bit of reliability.
Yeah, reliability and consistency. That's it. That's all they want, right? And a little bit of accountability. If you fuck up, admit you fucked up. Unless it's a really big expense, they're probably not going to give a shit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that consistency is important. Especially these days, like, yeah, they want you to be able to show up and do that kind of stuff. And I mean, like, with the sort of social media climate and everything, especially for like early-ish people in their career, you basically have to be doing all the marketing yourself. So you have to be reaching out to people and meeting people and sending emails and doing all this kind of stuff that a lot of people don't really like doing. I don't really like doing it, but I understand that it's a necessary part of the process to kind of build that snowball and get it rolling. Because these days, if you don't do that, you're just going to be buried in the ocean of content that's out there, right?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, who is Logan MacNair, right? I mean, that's a really I'm saying that because I say it like that because that's the real secret, right? Is how does Logan MacNair, how does Joshua Pantelleresco, how does whoever's listening or watching this, how do I separate myself from the pack? Now, I'm going to say this, there's like we'll say 1 in 1,000 of us can come down with a super brilliant idea that stands out so much that people go, holy shit, I got to check this out. For the rest of the 999 of us, it's like, okay, we're about the same in terms of our skill, by and large. Some are better, some are worse, but it's relatively the same. What can I do that they don't? What am I willing to do that they don't? Because that's going to get you the opportunity for the door to open, right? It sounds stupid simple, but honestly, it's amazing how many people don't do it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And like you can't avoid it. It's just unavoidable. Unless you're one of those people where your name carries enough weight where you don't have to do that, then it's an unavoidable part.
And even those people, they still do it. They may not do it to the same degree, but they still do it.
Yeah, well,
you never know.
They have people doing it for them, but
they might have people up, but they even sometimes they'll again, it's those opportunities for those conversations too, right? They go and meet people as well. It's just one of those things is access is harder, but it's not impossible, and they're still going out there because again, if you are on top, if you are on the top of the heap, you want to stay there. And the only way you're going to stay there is if you know what's going on underneath you. And guess what that requires? You have to meet people. It goes back to that no matter what you do.
Yeah, it really seems like the age of the reclusive writer that we saw a lot of in the 20th century. It really seems like that is a thing of the past now. I don't think.
Nah, it doesn't. To be honest with you, I don't think it ever truly existed. I think it was a myth.
It might be a bit mythologized looking back, but that idea of somebody who comes out and writes one hit book or something and then just like disappears from public life or never does interviews or never shows their face or never communicates with fans or the larger public world. I mean, you can't do that these days. You just can't.
Oh no, we're in an age of access, and to some degree, the decision you got to make is what do I share? What am I comfortable? Again, I don't advise anybody to share everything. That would be a terrible idea. But at the same time, I mean, you have to share something. You've got to be a human being at least a little bit on this thing, right?
Yeah, there's that weird like parasocial aspect. Well, you're a podcaster, you understand this. So you got people that listen to you and probably feel as if they know you, even though they've never met you, right? So you have to have something that people can kind of connect with or speak to on that kind of personal level.
Absolutely. I mean, look, even writing, like if you talk about like the craft of writing, and something I really realize, it's all in one sense, it's the same. All art's the same. It's about building a connection to people. The challenge is how do you do that with writing? It's about, for me, and something that took me a long time to realize is it's about the emotional experiences with characters, right? Does it feel something that I could experience? Does it feel real? And what can I do to what details, when I write a story, what details can make that feel real? What details aren't important to make it feel real? And that's probably like one of the biggest challenges when you tell a story is, okay, what's the story I'm telling? And what are the details that truly matter in this story? Right. And beyond that, how can, like, how do I want to build a connection to people, right? Do I want to make them, do I want dramatic? Do I want angst? Do I want pain? Do I want to make them laugh like a sieve? Do I want to make them cry? Do I want to make them angry? Can I do all of that because I'm a manipulative fuck? Or you're right, because that's like, but the whole point is people want to feel something or feel like what they get in their time is worth the investment. And the way we do that as creators is we build bridges.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something I noticed with a lot of younger or sort of emerging writers, where sometimes they get lost in like the world building portion of it. And they forget that, like you were saying, it really comes down to characters and people that I can relate to, and situations that I can relate to, whether it's in like a weird fantasy world or a science fiction world or a comic book or whatever. First and foremost, I'm looking for characters that I can connect with. If the world happens to be cool, that's a bonus, but the character should really come first, I think.
Well, I think the characters in the world should go hand in hand. That's what I think. That's what I think. They should be, one informs the other. Just right. And that's the way it should be. I just send a novel out to my editor, and I based the very first chapter out of an actual bar I went to in Vancouver.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because well, no, it was, I forget what it was called. It was like, you guys have these like hole in the wall bars. Like, when if you go on the outside, you would never know they were a bar, but the moment you go in. So I decided to I took that concept and decided, like, how would I make the dingiest version of this? Like the absolute shits. It's like, what would be like the worst nightmare? And I came up with stuff like, okay, they can't even get water right. Right? The wall, the roof is actually falling in this bar, little by little, right? So eventually this bar is going to literally evaporate and disappear one day, right? And now that I'm just having this conversation, I have to go back to that bar at some point in the series, because when the roof has completely caved in.
yeah, just make it a little bit worse each time.
Yeah, exactly. No, like literally give the bar like a name, like the rolling cockroach, just literally because right. And you're laughing because you can see this bar.
Yeah, right? It's like a universal concept of like the dingiest bar or whatever. And I mean, and it applies to all sorts of different settings and genres and everything, because that's a concept that people can connect with, right?
Yeah, it's really simple.
You're mentioning this place, and I've probably never been there, but I can see it in my head, and I've been to places like that. So it's something that I have a connection with already.
Yeah, you already know what this place is like.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And much like you and I, by the way, it wasn't that bar in Vancouver where I said they fucked up the water. But you wonder, right? How in the fuck did you do that? Right? Yeah. Like, it's water. How how? And then you're like, do I want to know? Do I really want to know the answer to that question?
Yeah. Well, those places are fascinating, because it's always just like, how is this place still in business? Who are these like old people that seem to always be here drinking here? Like, it just really makes me curious about like the history of the place and how it's run, and like so many questions, right? And I guess that's
But that's the thing. But that's the best part. Those are the best stories, right?
There's absolutely
little stories within those stories that you never fully get the idea of. But you won't get that idea until you actually go back. And that's the thing. You want that feeling. And that's really the and again, good science fiction, good fantasy. Science fiction is being dragged, I think, kicking and streaming into these kinds of worlds, right? Fantasy, I think, kind of embraced it a little earlier than science fiction did. They're like, okay, I realize this. I can have the coolest motherfucking dragon out there. Doesn't matter. It really doesn't, right? One of my all-time favorite dragon stories is the Paperbag Princess, right? Robert Munch. It's one of my favorites, right? And really, because the dragon he wins in like the first 3 pages, right? He just wins, right? And she's got this like paper bag thing, and it's like, right? You're just badass. Like, she's just badass princess.
Yeah,
and you're just like, okay, I can root for this woman. I can root for her. Because literally, she's got nothing left to lose. Literally, it got all taken away from her in like the first 3 pages. And she's like, and she's pissed. You get it. Like, you totally get it. Right? The dragon doesn't matter.
Exactly. So you're using all these fantastical tropes of like, dragons and that sort of thing. But fundamentally, it's about a very human experience. Can you persevere when you've been kicked down to the ground? Can you get up and keep going when odds are against you? It's a very universal concept, right?
So. Yeah. And really, I mean, if you really look at the measurement of life, that's what it's about ultimately, right? It's not where you end up at the end of the day. I mean, we all hope to have that happily ever after, right? But what it comes down to is, like, who are we when it's hard?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's who we really are. And I truly do believe that. I think that's why that story has such an appealing aspect to who we are. Like, we all like to think we'd be brave, but would we?
Right.
And like, what will you stand for when things are hard? Because it's easy to stand for stuff when things are comfortable.
Of course, yeah. And that's why some of my favorite books are just favorite stories in general, regardless of the medium, or when they really put their character through the ringer and just like make them have a real shitty time. Because I like to see like how people react to that and the sort of indomitable human will that perseveres through those kind of things.
Yeah, because that's when it's heroic. Like, yeah, that's exactly. like that's the secret to Spider-Man right there. That's really the secret to him.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's why you need to have a character that is, you know, going to be flawed and going to be challenged and going to actually have to experience real conflict, whether it's internal or external, because, you know, that is what the human condition is. Now, our conflicts might not be on the same intergalactic scale or whatever, and they might not have the fate of the world in their hands, but, you know, they're still important to us within our own concealed or contained worlds. So they translate very well. So
I just love the fact that we've talked for 20 minutes and I mentioned both Spider-Man and Paperbag Princess. I think that's a personal victory right there.
Hitting your quotas.
That's right. That's right. No. So what I think, honestly, I think the biggest conflict today, I'm not talking like the geopolitical stuff going on elsewhere. I mean, I think in North America, I think it's determining fantasy from reality.
In what way?
We live in a social media world, like what we're talking about. So it's really easy to isolate ourselves in a bubble, mm-hmm. right? And one of the things the pandemic kind of taught me, I have like 12 rules to success. The 9th rule is detach from all outcomes.
Sounds like a Buddhist principle.
It almost is, right? Yeah. But the thing is, what I realized about all of us is, okay, we all have biases. We can't entirely escape those biases we have. We can't do that. But one of the things you can do is like, we can try to go like, okay, can I separate myself from my ideas? Because if I can do that, I can listen to someone I disagree with and not be mad. Right. Yeah. And not be mad, because what a lot of us realize, what a lot of us I think struggle with is we have this idea of how the world works. And because we have the comfort, and this is kind of the reasons why I want to travel. So also, I want to imagine the world less, and I want to see it more close and personal, right? Because then I'll have a more genuine feeling of what the world really is. Then that's something that's important to me. But the reason I do that is because it's really easy on here to put people in a box. Right? Whether it's a political belief, whether it's something, a bias you have, whether it's like, it doesn't really matter. And by the way, I don't care which side of the fence you're on. It really, like, we all have an idea of how we think the world works. Then there's what the world works. Now, if we're attached to our idea to such a degree that the idea and the person are almost one and the same, there's no way to convince somebody that things are like, they're always going to take a different viewpoint of the idea as an attack on themselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if you detach from the idea, again, I don't like when we have conversations with people we disagree with, it's not always about trying to get the other person to agree with you. It's about trying to understand where you're coming from. Yeah. Right. And I want to, and that's the thing. I want to be open to understand as much as I humanly possibly for me to do so, because that way I can't, like we've talked for 25 minutes. I mean, we're having a fun conversation. I've made you laugh a few times, so we've got somewhat of a similar sense of humor. But the thing is, right? We're different people. I don't know how you came to be who you are. You don't know how I came to. Well, depending on how many shows you listen to, you maybe know a lot more about how I came to be who I am.
But which may or may not be accurate, because I'm
right, exactly. Right,
I'm basing it on what I see, which is what people do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you said, we see very, very small glimpses of people, and then we put them into categories or put them into boxes based on those small glimpses, which may or may not be accurate, right?
Well, probably not accurate at all.
Or at the very least, a very kind of warped view of the reality.
So I think when, and at least living, like I've said this a few times on this show, come back to Calgary this time, trying to get people just to go out and meet has been a chore. I don't know what it's like in Vancouver.
Kind of similar. Do you think that's part of a post-COVID thing, or do you think that's something else?
Okay, so this is how I would say it might be a post-Canadian thing. I don't know, because it wasn't a post-American thing, right? That like I was in San Diego. Like ignore the con, because that's not fair at all. But the fact that I was meeting people, talking to people regularly, just talking, bullshitting, right, and had the opportunity to hang out with complete strangers just because. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I got more of that in a week in San Diego than I got in a year in Calgary.
No,
and that's damning, a little damning, right? And I think Canadians and this again, I lived in London, Ontario. So when I grew up in London, Ontario, I noticed that people had a tendency there to get into their little zones of comfort and stay there. And I think what happened is during the pandemic is, I think this is a more Canadian thing than an American thing, but I'm sure it exists in the States too. I think what happened is we got very comfortable with smaller circles, and obviously to some degree that might even be a healthier thing in some ways, because obviously some of our friends are not as close as there's friends, there's like distant friends and acquaintances, and probably there's more about my close friends are my close friends, my distant friends are my distant friends, and that makes sense, right, to some degree. But I also think too, like this idea of going out and exploring and going beyond our comfort zone, right? I think we got used to how small the circle got, and I don't think that's entirely a healthy thing.
No, and I think you're probably right. And I think like through the internet and through social media, we get a small trickle of that kind of social connectivity that all human beings need, but it might scratch that itch for a lot of people, but at the end of the day, it's not the same thing, right? No. And it's something I've been kind of guilty of myself, and I find it especially true as I've gotten a bit older. I remember when I was young and when I was in university and stuff, like I was meeting people all the time. I was making new friends all the time from all different walks of life, and I find that as I get older, like that happens less and less. And it's something that I don't particularly like. So I'm trying to push back against that now, which is why, like I said earlier, I want to go to more like, writers' fests and all sorts of those kind of things.
Oh, sure.
Try to communicate and connect with people. And whether they're going to be open to like reciprocating and matching that, I mean, that's up to them. All I can do is what I can do on my end. But
and that's kind of where I'm at too. Like I'm at that point in my life. It's like, I'm 42, right? And I'm like, okay, I probably got 10 to 15 more years of being active. If I make care of myself, maybe 20. We'll say 20 years. Okay. I don't want to spend my next 20 years just behind a computer. I want to meet and talk and interact with people I care about.
Right.
And I want to do stupid, crazy shit, because at the end of the day, when you get right down to it, there's not much else worth doing.
Yeah, and you're certainly not going to look back and remember fondly all the time you sat, on the computer or whatever. You're going to remember the trips you went on and the people you met and the crazy stuff that you did. That's the stuff that's going to stick in your brain, right?
Yeah. And you got to constantly do those things. And those are, again, and it's something. How old are you, if you don't mind my asking?
Almost 35.
Okay, so you're a little younger than me. So a little younger. Only a little bit though, so you're pretty close, probably the same attitude. Maybe you give more of a shit, maybe less of a shit than I do at this point. right? But I mean that's relative at this point.
Right.
No, like what you got, so you got realistically 25 more years of right before you maybe it's going to be a little too more difficult to do these things.
Right.
So you got 25 more years. So what do you want to do with them? And think now. I say this like I sound like an old man saying this, but it's true. Think now, because you don't get the time back. You just don't. And
yeah, it's true. And that's what they say, right? As you get older, that it's time that becomes the most valuable resource that you have. So, and I definitely start to notice that, like, if I'm really locked into work, or if I'm really locked into something, and I'm doing the kind of same thing day in, day out, and in my own little world, the days just fly by.
Yeah.
Like I wake up and like a week has passed and I don't, I barely recall anything. So I am trying to like actively fight back against that a little bit. And that involves like for instance, I drive around a lot, or I'll drive home, which is a fairly long drive. And every once in a while, if I'm passing through like a small town, I'll say, I've never actually like gone into the town and like driven around its streets and did this. And the point being that I always try to see a little bit more of the world whenever I can, whether it's just right here in my own neighborhood, or whether it's, in a different province or country. Any day that you can see more of the world, I think is a good day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The biggest thing I don't think I'd ever live in Vancouver again, but I will say the biggest thing is that, yeah. I don't think so. I'd have to I'd have to be paid a stupid pile of money to think about it. Right. I get Vancouver and LA are similar in the sense that I get why people are there.
Yeah.
Right. I get why. At the same point, everybody tells me the same thing. I talked to a lot of people that lived in LA when I was in San Diego. It's just like, yeah, it's where everything is. But and so you're there, but it's like if we had our way, we'd like, we'd live somewhere else. Like if I were to live in California, it would be San Diego. Yeah. Right. It's literally like, it's perfect weather. It's fun. The only downside to it is it's crazy expensive. Yeah. Right. It's crazy expensive. But if I could figure out a way around, like, again, I just but I think of it more like this. That's just a one problem. If I can solve that one problem, I'm there. Right. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, I don't look at it like as an insurmountable thing. But what I will say is, like Vancouver and LA have always felt to me like they're places people go because they need something.
Right.
And once they get what they need, people leave.
Yeah. 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 It's strange. When I was young, because I was raised in a very small kind of rural town in central BC. And I always saw Vancouver as like, that's where all the opportunity is. That's where all the cool stuff is happening. That's where all the cool people are. I want to get out and go to that town. That's, it's happening. It's got art. It's got culture. It's progressive, blah, blah, blah. And now, now that I've been here for a while, I find myself missing the kind of pace and lifestyle of a small rural town. And it's not to say like Vancouver's got a lot going for it. It's beautiful. There's got a lot of cool things here. But the only reason, quite frankly, I stay here is because this is where my job is. And it'd be hard for me to find a job elsewhere at this moment. So that's really the only thing keeping me here. I think if I could move to a different place, I probably would. And I probably might at some point.
Well, I mean, I hope really your boss doesn't listen to this show.
I don't think so. I think we're good.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, if that's all that's keeping you, then it's time to leave. Like, and I say it like that as honestly, you can. Okay. Yeah. I don't know what your job is. I'm sure hopefully it pays well because you are in Vancouver, right? Hopefully it does. But I mean, if you were in a place where the pace was easier and pay was just a little bit less, right? Might be I
would take the trade, honestly.
Yeah.
Because at this point, even getting paid a little bit less, I mean, you're going to make up the difference living outside of Vancouver anyway. So
yeah. So I mean, so in one very real. So this, this is just me, just as a person to person. If you're not happy where you're at, it's content, it's a good place, but not a great place, right? We'll say that. I don't feel you hate Vancouver. I feel more it's just
no, and you're right. I think that's pretty much what it is. It's not that I have, all things considered, I have a pretty comfortable life, right? So I don't want to complain and make it seem like
no.
Life, but you're right. It becomes a contentment, I suppose, and that's factors into what we've been talking about social circles and all these other things. I do feel that there's a bit of a plateau maybe that I've reached, and I could very easily do this for like the next 30 years and have this life and not really challenge myself. But I don't know if I would be fully satisfied at the end of that.
Would you regret it?
Yeah, probably.
Then you should go.
Yeah.
Then you should. And I mean, that's just got a guy. I worked at Pure Labor Courier for 9 years while I was trying to figure out how to actually turn creativity into a living.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized it took me a long time. Now, I would say I was there for almost 10 years. For the first, I'll say 7.5, 8 years, the job was good for me. Because I needed that stability. I needed that routine. It was flexible enough that I could change my hours when I needed to do certain things. It had a lot going for me. And when it came time to fix my teeth, there wasn't too many better places to do that at. But this is the but. There came a point a long time ago where I had done everything in the job thing I wanted to do. I didn't want to become a manager. Didn't want to move up into management. I just didn't feel like I would be very happy doing that. Mm-hmm. Right. So I didn't want to move into management. So what that left me was, okay, what do I do? Where do I go? I could stay here. I had job security. I was getting to the point where like I've been in the union long enough now that like the good benefits were starting to roll my way. I could pretty much do what I wanted on the dock because I had the seniority, and I could get any job I wanted. So then the question becomes, right? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And again, I was comfortable, but I wasn't happy.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, all things considered, I could still be there right now if I wanted to be.
And a lot of people do, right? A lot of people they take that, and they get stuck or they just
Stuck is okay. Stuck is actually a good word. It's not always the right word. Like circumstances matter too. Like for example, if you got kids, you got a family to feed. Right. It's a slightly different equation you're factoring in there, and that's fair. But even then, there comes a point in this journey where you gotta be like, okay, listen, I got kids. Do I show them that loyalty pays off of the job, or do I show them that it's possible that if you want to go for something, you got to take that leap? Now, you might not be able to take that leap as fast because, again, you're feeding your kids, you're feeding your family, but you can still take that leap. And at some point, you still should, right? There are lots of, like, I know single parents that have their own businesses, that are doing their own thing and raising their kids and doing what they love. It can totally be done, right? But the thing is, you gotta make a decision at some point what's important. And for all of us, that's a different equation. In your case, if you don't have kids to worry about, if you don't have a family to raise, then the question becomes for you, is the paycheck worth is the paycheck and comfort worth the price of you not growing in ways you feel you need to grow?
Yeah, and that's something I've been wrestling with for the last couple of years. So those are big questions, right?
Oh, sure.
Not necessarily ones that have an easy answer, but you're right in that, like, when you wake up in the morning and you're in bed and it feels good, you have to get out of bed and start your day and go and do shit at some point. But it feels really good to stay in bed also, right? So I understand why people kind of just, to use that metaphor, I understand why people stay in bed and stay in their kind of comfort place and don't get out into the cold and go and do things that are challenging and hard. But I don't want to end up becoming complacent, or I don't want to end up, like you said, looking back at a life and saying, oh, I wish I did that, or I wish I could have done that, or I wonder what life would have been like if I did this, that, or that. It'd be much better to do these things, even if they, like we said earlier, even if they don't end super well, or even if they end in failure or whatever, it's still worthwhile to make those kind of leaps and to actually help you grow and experience things.
So I do you want to hear rule 8? My 8th rule is stay uncomfortable.
I like that one. I do.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah, stay uncomfortable. Yeah. The reason that is we don't grow when we're comfortable. We grow when we're not. Right. That's just the way it is. And I realized this a long time ago that I discover more cool shit when I just go off into the unknown about myself. And while I may make a shit ton of mistakes, I don't know if you believe in God. I do. And when I go to the Almighty, I'm going to say this: God, I have a fuck ton of mistakes, but I have very few regrets.
Yeah,
regrets hurt, right? And I'm good. And here's the thing: there are some mistakes that may haunt you, but they're not what they're. Most of those mistakes are born from regret.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're born from regret. They're not born from you trying and failing. They're born from you trying. You know what? You can look back and say, you know what? I gave it my best shot. I did everything I knew how to do. And if you can honestly look at yourself in the mirror and say, I did that, you'll live with whatever happens. You'll live with it. You'll be like, you know what? I did it. I tried it. Right? I made an ass of myself. I kicked ass. Whatever the case may be, I did it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I did it. And you won't ever feel bad about that, no. Right? And the other thing too, and something again, another thing the pandemic taught me, who gives a fuck what other people think about what your choices? It's about you. It's about you, right? If you are being your honest, authentic self, and people have a problem with it, right? Well, they're the problem, not you. I mean, as long as you're not deliberately trying to be like, you know, hey, I just want to do this crazy, stupid thing. I want to skydive into jelly beans. Why? Because why the fuck not? Why the fuck not? And people go, you're crazy. It's like, that's fine. I am totally cool with this level of crazy. I'm going in those damn jelly beans. All right. I'm even going to, I'll probably do a cowabunga on the way down. I'm really good with, I am excellent with that. Right. And the thing is, there are some people who are going to look at me like I'm absolutely shaking their head, like I'm absolutely bug crazy. And there are other people who are going to be like, dude, I admire you.
This guy's hardcore. I like this guy.
Yeah, exactly. That's it, right? I'm not afraid to journey into the unknown. And I learned a long time ago that I've had my ass kicked. That's the thing. I've had it. It's humbling, but it's also, I fall into kind of that 10% of people that when they go through those ass kickings actually get bolder, not actually don't become bolder, because you just know it's like, I'll just get my ass kicked again if it doesn't work out. And I honestly, I'm good with that. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, you gotta be like, okay, again, you don't necessarily have to just leap. I'm kind of a leaper. That's just, I leap. I'm not saying do it how I do it. But what I am going to say is, okay, you may want to take a parachute with you. Take it from me. Not going with a parachute sometimes does not work out the way you plan. But once you got your parachute, just jump, man. Just go for it.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because like so many anxieties or thoughts or fears that people have stem from like, okay, what is this bad thing that could potentially happen to me? And sometimes it takes actually experiencing that bad thing to realize that, hey, that happened, but you know what? Life goes on. I'm still here.
Yeah.
And that really helps you get over that fear or that anxiety that you have about the bad thing in the first place. And that's why, like, going back to what you said about staying uncomfortable, I mean, that's something I've tried to take to heart these last few, like, so every once in a while, like, you know, maybe if a friend will call me and be like, hey, you know, whatever, we're going to go to a salsa dancing class downtown. Do you want to come? And my immediate reaction is like, well, no, I can't dance. That sounds terrible. I'd much rather just stay home and play video games all night. But as soon as I find myself thinking like that, I go, okay, wait a minute. This is something that is out of my comfort zone. I don't necessarily want to do it. That means I should probably do it. And then I never end up regretting the decision to actually go and do the thing. Even if I don't enjoy it, even if I'm a bad dancer and I don't have fun doing it, I still go home thinking, well, I did that. I'm glad I did it. I could have just stayed home and played video games like any other night, and it would have been a completely forgettable night. But I did this thing that was out of my comfort zone, and it was a new experience, and it was good for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like you go through these, like that's what life's about. Again, I'm not saying do this every night. I mean, some nights video games are good. I'm playing Persona 5. I'm playing Persona 5 Royal right now when
Classic.
I do play videos. Yeah. Classic. Yeah. I see you played it.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But no, you're right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's okay. You know, self-care is good, and you're allowed to have those days. But you know, it can be very, very easy to fall into that.
Well, Michael Bisping did my favorite quote about this, like he did it on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he said it actually when they talked about him winning the title. Goes right. Here's what he says: taking a day off is okay. In fact, it takes confidence to take a day off. And that's actually, and it's true. It really does. I took a day off from freelancing yesterday because I needed it. I needed to just crash. I'd done a lot of just freelance gigs, one after the other, I needed a break. So I took one, and I don't regret it. It takes confidence to take that day off. Now, here's the other half of the quote. Now, it's one thing to take a day off. It's another, but eventually, we're creatures of momentum. It's a fine line between confident and being a lazy fucker, right? Right. It's a fine line, but sometimes, man, you just gotta say you're good, and that's totally. I think this is what I've learned. This is what I've learned with people. It doesn't matter what you choose to do. It really doesn't. What matters is, are you honest enough about what you want out of this? Are you honest enough? Like, are you doing this because you want to do it? Or are you doing this because you're afraid to do something else? Right? If it's the first, then cool. You know what? There's nothing anyone can say to you. Go do it. Have a good time. If it's the second, maybe you need to look in the mirror, because I think you're right. Because the person you're bullshitting the most is yourself. And I honestly think the biggest secret to confidence is being honest with yourself about what you want and doing it.
Yeah. And I think another part of it is something you mentioned earlier about how at the end of the day, most people don't think about us or care about the things that we do as much as we think that they do.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, it doesn't happen anymore because it's something that I've gotten over. But now when I was younger, I used to like lie in bed at night and think, ugh, I did this thing that was so embarrassing, or I said this thing that was so stupid, or whatever. I made an idiot out of myself. And then at some point you have to realize that, hey, these people, I bet you they're not thinking about you right now or the stupid things that you did. They're thinking about their own stupid things that they did. So once you get that out of your head, that like, hey, you're not under a microscope all the time. People actually don't care that much about, these little things that you do. It allows you to kind of, live your authentic self a little bit more comfortably and a little bit more openly, I think.
I say it like this. It's okay to be the dumbass once in a while. It's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to do something just for, I went to my buddy had a bachelor party. We played Nerf bow and arrow. And for like the first two games, I was absolutely terrible because I hadn't shot a bow in 30 years. Yeah. I had like this defective, like one of the bad ones with none of those things. I couldn't load the damn thing to save my life for the first two games. I switched bows and I was fine. But man, I got creamed those first two games, man. Creamed. Right. Thank goodness it was Nerf and I had a helmet. One shot was just like, oh man. But I mean, you're allowed to suck. Yeah. You're allowed to be like all these things that people are like terrified of. You're allowed to suck. You're allowed to be stupid. You're allowed to be wrong. You know what? You're allowed, like, grand scheme of things. I mean, in the best way, no one gives a shit about that. It really, right? That's not what matters. Did you have a good time? Did you learn something? Did you do something you wanted to do? Cool. Right? Even if you sucked.
And we all suck at some point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's where we all got to start. So, but if you're so worried about how other people are perceiving you, then you're never going to get out of that.
No,
like it's like, and it applies to pretty much anything. I got, there's a friend of mine who's trying to get back into exercising and going to the gym after being away from like 10 or 15 years. And he's like, I really don't want to go because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm worried that people are going to be judging me or they're going to be looking at me. I'm like, dude, nobody gives a shit. Just go, like, do your thing. If you're trapped thinking about how other people are perceiving you, you're not going to get out of that sucky stage. You're just gonna placate there forever. So
yeah,
you really got to get that stuff out of your head and just start living for yourself and being comfortable with yourself. And like you said, not being afraid to look a certain way or to embarrass yourself or whatever these other things are.
I'm certainly not. I'm not afraid to make an ass of myself. They actually gave me an award for it. I'm good with it.
They're encouraging you. They're encouraging you.
Oh, that's the way. I took up I started drawing during the pandemic, and like for the first 8 months, I was like, "What if I suck?" And then,
of course, you're gonna suck.
Oh well, yeah, but again, that's not the thought. Like when you're scared, it's like,
yeah,
right. The eureka moment for me was, so what if I suck?
Yeah.
You know what? I got to draw. I've gotten a job with people that have worked on television shows. I've got to draw with people that actually have created comics I've known for over 20 years. Right. And I suck. They don't care. We're just having a good time talking about stupid stuff like, like whether or not you got to be hit by a punch from Mike Tyson or a car.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's important stuff when you're drawing.
Yeah. But like me, I like learning things. I like learning new things, and I like trying to teach myself like new hobbies, or just every once in a while, I'll just like get really fascinated by like a random point in history or a random event or whatever, and I'll just get really super into it.
So you're a history guy?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But like for example, just like this year, I decided that like I want to learn how to do like magic tricks with like cards.
Okay.
Not like just like card tricks.
Yeah.
You
can call magic tricks. Why not?
It's cool. Yeah, it's cool. I wanted to learn how to do like sleight of hand stuff, so I bought a few books. I watched some videos. I've been practicing, trying to like manipulate a deck. It's just like a random thing that just like I want to get good at, or I want to learn how to do that. I don't know how. I'm going to be terrible at it. I've never done it before, but I have a desire to learn. And I think the ability to like keep that learner's mind, or specifically a beginner's mind, is really helpful. Because like, some people have a very low tolerance for frustration, and they say, well, if I'm not good at this thing right away, then it's not worth doing, and I don't want to put the effort in to learn how to do it. But I think if you keep a beginner's mind and accept the fact that, hey, I'm going to suck at this at first, I'm probably going to suck at it for a while, and that's okay, then that's how you actually end up learning new things and expanding your horizons, whether it's drawing or card tricks or reading more about something you don't know much about. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of stuff that I don't ever want to get away from. Like I hope that's something that I can keep doing for the rest of my life, right?
So what's your favorite card trick, if you don't mind my asking?
If I had a deck here, I could show you some. I'm getting okay. I'm still pretty bad, but like I'm learning the basic fundamentals of like how to manipulate the cards. And
would you say competent?
Semi-competent.
Yeah, okay. That's okay.
I might not be blowing any minds yet, but soon. Because like it's, I don't know. I just like, it's something that I would see people do. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I wish I could do that.
Well, I just think
there's nothing stopping me from learning except for my own,
I actually think card tricks are storytelling.
Absolutely, yeah, and the best, I think the best. See, you can tell I've been getting into this, but like the best, whatever you want to call them, magicians or sleight of hand artists, they incorporate storytelling into their act, and that's a huge part of it. Like,
well, yeah, because it's inseparable. They're creating an illusion.
Yeah,
that's what they're doing, right? It doesn't matter if it's a card trick or an escape or any of those. It's an illusion.
Yeah.
Right. So you create a wonderful illusion, right? And you take people on a ride. I mean, and that's like even a card trick. I remember I had so speaking of magicians, I remember going to a Pizza Hut way back in the day, and the server was a musician. He goes, "Can we practice tricks?" Right? Can I practice some tricks? So he did a couple card tricks. His card tricks were amazing. Like he had that shit down. Yeah. He tried a rope trick. He didn't quite have it yet, but he was getting there. I could still see when he made the switch. right? But you watching it learn. It's like it's learning the art of where you want. I think the real secret to a good trick is you know where the person's eyes are naturally going to go to, and then you're playing with those expectations.
Yes.
Right. That's the real secret, right? Right. Most people, like, for example, you're doing a card trick, everybody's going to look at the cards. They're never going to look at your hands.
Yeah. And that's exactly. So like Ricky Jay, who is one of like the masters of sleight of hand stuff, and he's talked a lot about this, about how exactly you want to know where their eyes are looking, and while their eyes are focusing on your hands or the cards or whatever, that's when you're doing the other stuff that's going to be the actual trick. And he was also really good at incorporating like verbal dialogue into his acts. So he would use like, I don't want to say like verbal hypnosis because that's maybe a bit too far, but he was really good at like lulling people into like a weird kind of verbal state and using words and language to catch people off guard and to direct their attention and to do all sorts of other things. So it all goes into like this big act. And like you said, it very much is like a story or a narrative that you're forming when it all comes together.
Well, that's the thing, right? What he was doing was, well, he was going to be he was going to be your buddy, and I mean, I say it like that, not in like a malicious way, but he's your friend. Listen, I'm going to build a bridge. I'm going to make a connection with you, because the moment I make a connection with you, you are going to let your guard down, and you're going to let your guard down. I'm not going to take it. I'm going to dazzle you. That's where I'm going to take advantage of it. Is I'm going to give you a really cool trick out of it. I'm going to give you a gift. Right? That's why it works. That's the other thing too. If it was malicious, people would be a lot more guarded with it. There'd be no way to break the guard. That's not what he's doing. He's like, listen, I'm going to tell you a story, right? And that's basically like, he's not right. I'm gonna be your butt. I'm going to tell you a cool story, and when it's over, you're going to be amazed at the trick I did. Right. And that's pretty much what he does. Now, you may say it in a very different way, but that's what he's doing. Right. So he'll go in there, he'll lull you into a sense of trust. He'll get you to trust him. And once he's got you, once he's trusting you, that's when he's going to play his money. Like, again, that's when the illusion will show up. Right. And that's why he's good at what he does. Right. Because again, he's not only good at the craft of what he does, but he's good at making a bridge with people.
Right.
And that's the real secret.
Yeah. And that was like so integral to the entire act, was that connection and that sort of familiarity with the audience and all that kind of like, which, like you said, puts them at their guard and makes them either less attentive or less like, less hawkish about what they're looking for, and just a little bit more on ease, which, allows everything else to happen a little bit more naturally as well.
People want to play.
Yeah. Well,
people
they want to be amazed. They want to see something cool. Like, they want that.
Yeah. So they'll play. They'll play along. But you have to convince them that it's worth playing along. And that's the real challenge, right? It's not, people are going to be like, okay, yeah, I've seen a magic trick. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen a ton of magic tricks. But have you thought about this? No, okay, I want, and then okay, I'm in. Show me this. I got to see it, right? And they're hawking and kind of trying. They're halfway looking through your book, trying to look through your bullshit.
Yeah.
But again, if you're entertaining, you're funny, you're a human being to them, right? Eventually, they're going to suspend their disbelief, because that's what a good story does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? It's all about the suspension of belief. So you let them you let them say, okay, listen, you're going to let your guard down, because you have to. But if you do, I promise you, and this is the promise every good storyteller makes, the story I'm telling you is worth the ride you're going to go on.
That's right. Yeah. That's a really good analogy. It's the exact same thing. We know that he's not really a magician. We know that, he's not magic, just like we know that there's no such thing as, dragons and elves or whatever, but we accept it. We accept the premise because we're willing to believe that there's a payoff coming.
Yeah.
So like, whatever, throw anything you want at me, as long as you say that, hey, this story is worth the trip that you're taking me on. Fine, I'll believe you. I'll accept whatever premise you can give me. Now, a good storyteller will make it obviously worth the trip. They don't always do that, but if they're doing it right, then yeah, they will.
Well, again, the response you're hoping for is one of two. Okay. The first response you're hoping for is that they loved everything you just did, everything you expected. They went with hook, line, and sinker. The other response you're hoping for is that they absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
No, you want one or the other. You would prefer the first, but you're okay with the second, because at least then they're still emotionally invested in what you did.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the thing, right? It's not that you want people to hate you, but the people that despise what you're doing are also invested in what you're doing. That's the thing, right? They're just as invested as the people that love it. It's just the reaction is different. So don't be afraid of that reaction. The reaction you want to be afraid of is complete silence.
Yeah, or just total complacency, or just like no reaction at all is, like you say, much worse than a bad reaction. I think in pretty much any medium, if you're eliciting even a negative reaction, it means you're doing something. It means you're doing something that's unique, or that's outside the sort of standard, or something that elicits that kind of response is probably going to have something special about it, which may not be for everybody, but there'll be something there.
Yeah. Look, very rarely people will hate this analogy. Very rarely are any of us vanilla or chocolate ice cream. Right. I don't know anyone that doesn't like one or the other, right? Yeah. Most people, right? I don't know anyone I've had one person on my show in the entire time I've done this that didn't like ice cream.
Just didn't like any ice cream.
And not like any ice cream. And I know I was like, I see the reaction you just
unthinkable.
Had. Yeah, exactly. Right. But everybody else, there might be a flavor they don't like, and that's fine. Like, look, not every flavor is for you, but there's a flavor of ice cream for you somewhere. Right. And the thing is, if someone goes to me, I don't like that I don't like butterscotch. Okay, butterscotch ain't for you. But did you like peppermint? Yeah, I love peppermint. So, right, you might be their butterscotch. That is totally fine. They are reacting like they should. It's like, oh, it's like I can't stand it. That's fine. That's the reaction. That's a reaction. It's good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's much better if we're using the ice cream analogy. I think that's much better than trying to create a flavor that like everybody is going to like, or that is going to be completely like non-offensive to the palate of the entire world, because that's probably going to be kind of watered down and generic and boring. I'd much rather have, a wacky flavor that some people love and other people won't touch. Right. To me, that's a lot more interesting than trying to create something has universal mass appeal.
Well, here's the thing. You know what has universal mass appeal? A rice cake.
I mean, if you put something on it, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean,
bland and flavorless, right?
Yeah, that's universal. That is universal. That's
bland. It's totally unoffensive. It's totally like not going to,
it's totally unoffensive. Nobody wants it, but I mean, it's totally unoffensive, right? And that's the thing. It's like I don't want to be a rice cake in this industry. Yes. I want to be I want to be my own unique and wonderful flavor of ice cream.
Yes, I want to be black licorice. I want to be.
That's right. You know what?
Everybody hates.
Yeah, exactly. I'm good with that. You know what? I am very, very good. I'm very, very good with that. So just for the record, we went from like Paperbag Princess to flavors of ice cream. This has been a very serious conversation.
Right.
But I say it like that because that's the thing. Like, you can't make everybody happy. You just can't, right? It's impossible. What you can do, however, is, again, be the best version of yourself. Let the people that come to you. Let the people that want to run away from you run away from you. That's fine, right? And if someone's really loud and obnoxious about your stuff, I've started to try to perfect this, is turn the people that hate me the most into my biggest advertisers.
Yeah,
because they will do all kinds of work for you you don't expect, and it's funny to watch them, do it. So again, I'm a competent. I'll say a compliment. I do pencil crayon, pencils, inks. So I put a thing up I was doing in San Diego, And someone asked me how long I was drawing for. I said 3 years, off and on, right? And so I got this response with this, someone gives me an art book and saying that you need to learn how to draw. Within the same hour, I got my first commission.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So,
yeah, right. So I mean,
it's clearly working for someone, but
yeah. So that's pretty much it, right? That's how I treat it. It's like, you know what? I really don't care if you despise what I'm doing. What I'm doing. This is the thing. I've learned to do this. Now, if you despise me enough to tell me you despise me, this sounds, again, it's going to sound incredibly asshole-ish. Now I'm trying to figure out how to utilize you to help me find more people.
Any press is good press, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but no, like I once in a while I'll catch myself if I'm writing something. I'll be like, I think people would like it better if I did this or if this happened. And I really got to catch myself and be like, well, that might be true, but is that true to what I'm trying to say here? Is that true to the characters that I've developed? And I have to kind of convince myself to say, actually, this is the way I want to do it, even if it's going to elicit bad reactions, even if this is not going to be satisfying, or even if this is not going to be, the conclusion or whatever it is that people want. This is a story that's in me that I'm trying to tell, and I need to stay true to that. It's not always easy to do, but I think being aware of it is important.
Sure. And also, sometimes it's okay not to give them what they want. At least
them
in there. Yeah. Sometimes the denial makes them want it more.
I agree completely. That's
yeah.
I got a lot of people weren't. Well, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but some people, when they read my recent book, they found the ending to be the way that it ends to be unsatisfying, and I'm like, well, that's kind of what I was going for. I kind of wanted to have people walk away with a kind of unsettling feeling about it. Yeah.
I haven't gotten into it just yet. By the way, thank you very much. I said this there, but part of it I'll say publicly. Thank you very much. Looking forward to it's the next book actually after I'm reading the Wonder Woman novel by Leah Bardugo right now. As soon as that's done, you're actually next on the list.
Okay, well, you can tell me if you hated the ending or
yeah. So
seriously, be honest.
No. I totally will. The only thing I will tell you is this: if I hate the ending, like, okay, so did you read Dark Tower by Stephen King?
Yep.
I hated the ending, but it was the right ending. But it was
exactly. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Those two things can exist at the same time.
Yeah.
You can hate it and know that for this particular story, it couldn't have ended any other way.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Some people have trouble reconciling that, but me, I like that. I like that.
We don't live in a perfect world. That's the thing. We don't live in a perfect world. The reason why Dark Tower, I love it like legitimately the last book, I have no shame admitting this, broke me down into tears 2 or 3 times. Like, I have no shame. Like, there was a couple of those scenes just right in the face, like just hit me. Like when I'm spoiling this, but then again, the book's 20 years old, so I'm not going to feel so bad about it. He gets to the tower at the very end, and the last thing he does before he walks in, it actually makes me cry because it is a testament to the journey he went through to get there. And that I genuinely felt what he felt there. And that was amazing. Now, I'm not going to spoil it for anyone that hasn't read it, what he finds at the top of the tower. That is horrible. It's horrible.
And a lot of people were like upset about that.
But
but I agree. I think that's exactly what it needed to be. But I remember when it came out, there was some pretty strong reactions about.
But it's the right ending, because the true ending of that story is the poem itself. That's the true ending, right? And that always has been where it was always going to go. But that's not the point. The point is he won and lost so many battles along the way. You rooted for him. And when he got to the tower, that was his victory. That was his real victory, right? He got there. It wasn't everything else. The price he paid to get there, considering everything, like, it felt earned. It felt like he deserved to win.
Yeah,
And he did.
It goes back to what we were saying earlier about good characterization and good struggles within having characters have good, believable struggles, and having that be the most compelling part, right?
Yeah, and for him, I mean, I felt like the one I'm going to spoil is Jake, because I thought that was he tried so hard, and it just was like I felt for him right there and then, because that was a mean thing that happened, right? The way it did happen. And it was like, this is brutal. But when he got there, it was like, it was worse. But he tried. And that's all you can ask, right? A good character is it. No one wins all the battles. And you don't even need to win it. And in fact, again, grand scheme of things, real life, there's a lot of horrible shit going on in the world right now. Like real life for a second. There's a lot of big things a lot of us kind of feel like we have no control over. And some of it, and while I'm questioning that a lot more as I'm getting older, like was there something we could have done about this? And part of me actually, and I think in my head, honestly, the answer is yes. The other part of me is like, okay, but again, a lot of people don't feel that way. A lot of people feel this is big and beyond their control. And we see Terra sometimes. The bad guys win, right? So that's what happened in the real world. The bad guys win. Sometimes they win the big battles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Or there's not a clear winner, or things are unambiguous, or things are not resolved neatly all the time.
But again, going back to full circle here, it's about who you are in those moments. Those are where the victories are really won. Those are where the real victories in this life are you true to yourself when it's tough, when there is no clear winner? Because good and bad, there's good in everything. There's bad in everything, right? And it's learning to recognize those things honestly and clearly. The fact that, that people in the worst moments, again, people show you who they are. And sometimes it's incredible what you see. It's like good. Sometimes it's horrifying what you see, bad. And you're like, okay, right? But those are the real human struggles. The big problem, we haven't changed as a species in thousands of years. We tell the same story as a species over and over and over again. I think the real issue is, who am I in this moment? And again, that's what makes the best fiction too. Again, you don't need the happily ever after. Those are nice.
Yeah, there's a time and place for sure, but there's a time and place for stories that have good moral tales where the heroes win and the bad guys are defeated. Those serve a purpose and they're good once in a while. But I like a bit more variety. That's a bit more true to real life, which tends to be a lot messier in many respects.
Sure.
But you're right though. I mean, like at the end of the day, there's only since for the last however many thousand years, there only is like 5 or 6 different stories just told in different ways, obviously. But at the end of the day, they're all about, it's the same human struggle that's just been told countless different times for thousands of years. But they're all fundamentally, when you break them down to their absolute core essence, about the human struggle and about the things that have always kind of binded humans together for thousands of years. And that's why people keep coming back to those familiar kind of narratives and stories or tropes, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. And ultimately, and something I will say here is, and ultimately, the big thing though I will say is the biggest difference for every story, those 5 or 6 stories, is in how they're told. And that's what makes everybody unique.
Yeah, I mean, similar universal struggles, but obviously everybody's is going to be shaped and flavored by their own experiences, by their own setting, by their own situations, by X number of other variables and factors, and that's what keeps it fresh and interesting. But the core morals they've been unchanged basically since day one. So
yeah, and I think that's fine. I think that's
absolutely. It's good. It's good to acknowledge that. It's not a flaw. I think it's a good thing to be aware of that. that allows you to be a bit more creative with the formula. Once you know that, like, okay, this is the story that I'm telling. It's the same story that's been told 1,000 different times, but this is how I'm going to do it in this kind of unique way, and with, you know, whatever else, my own personal flavor to it. But in order to like mess with the formula, you have to know the formula in the first place, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you got to make a decision. Are you going to truly defy expectations, or are you going to play into them?
Mm-hmm.
So, but you have to understand what those expectations actually are.
And both of those directions can make a very good story. It's just being able to tell it in an appropriate way, and being able to play with convention and or follow convention appropriately is, you know, hopefully one of the most basic skills that a storyteller will pick up.
Yeah. Mr. Logan, I wish I could talk to you a little longer. Unfortunately, I do have my side gig calling me soon. So before I disappear, you probably should tell people about your book and why it's awesome and made of cheese.
Well, you haven't read it yet, so you don't know that, but I'll take that.
No.
I'll take that as a vote of confidence.
Well, yeah.
Came out earlier this year. It's called Troll. It's a novel. It's a fairly dark story. I'll say that off the front, but it's about kind of some of the stuff we've been talking about earlier, specifically what the internet is doing to us and some of the dark corners that exist on the internet. And it's a book I wrote after spending a lot of time in these spaces myself, not because I was into them, but for work purposes, and just generally being alive in the kind of 2010s and seeing how quickly discourse and connection and disillusionment, disconnection, all these things, alienation, have really affected us. I had a lot to say, and I tried to put it in this book as accurately and authentically as possible. So if you spend too much time on the internet and too much time online, and if you're curious about what it's doing to us, hopefully there's some stuff in that book that might speak to you.
All right. And how can people find you?
I am on X. I still have to correct myself from saying
no, it's okay. I still want to call it Twitter myself.
It sounds weird, right?
No, it totally does. It totally does. I think yeah, I'm not a big fan of the. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not a big fan of the branding aspect of it.
What, really? It's so perfect.
Yeah.
No, I hate it. It's bad.
Yeah, it's terrible. Like, let's be honest. It's interesting. I will say this about the social media. As a journalist, I still like it because because it's the best spot for journalism on the web. That, for good or ill, it's the truth. The one I despise the most, ironically, is Facebook, because it doesn't have any. It's not good at anything. It's just everybody's there.
Yeah. Well, even worse now in Canada with the new.
Yeah. So anyway, how can people find you? So
they can find me there at Logan MacNair. They can find me at my website, loganmacnair.com, or just a quick Google search will take you to any of the stuff that I've done.
Okay, so did I do this right? Am I trained professional?
MAC.
Dang.
You would not be the first, believe me.
I know. But see, look at my last name. See.
You got a tough one too.
Yeah. So, well, no. See, that's why I feel bad, right? Because
it used to bother me. It doesn't anymore. At this point,
that's what I get.
Yeah, that's right.
Alrighty. Yeah. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, check out Troll. Now, yes, I have not read it yet, but here's the thing: he finished a novel. That by itself is an accomplishment in itself. So definitely should check that out. Check out Logan. And folks, that will do it this week for the streaming. I will be back next week. I have a cool guest Monday. Kurt Zauer returns to the podcast. I'm probably going to try to sneak in at least one more guest next week as well. But that will do it for this episode of Just Joshing. I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. And I'll see you guys next time.